Alrighty, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I know more people are coming in soon. Things are wrapping up outside. So today we're having our final speaker, and it's going to be, or final speakers rather, and this will be about the day in the life of a PocketWorlds engineer with Ian, Drew, and I guess Matt as well. Let's get a round of applause for them.
You'll get a bit more perspective than just engineering. I've brought some folks from our engineering and our product design departments. So yeah, really, so hello everybody. I was here last night. I'm good to see some familiar faces. Great, my name's Matt. I lead our people org at PocketWorlds. We're a small gaming studio here in Austin, Texas. And we primarily make a game called Kayrouz. It's a big, living, hyper-creative social ecosystem. I'd say it's best described as like a social MMO. There's a couple core pillars that we kind of keep in mind when we're building our platform. And the two that always ring true to me are creative self-expression and social connection. There's a lot of really cool art that's made weekly in-house from our art team in the form of really cool cosmetics, clothing, accessories, jewelry, tattoos, pets, cool items that people can use to customize their avatars and navigate all these different interconnected digital spaces that we create and our users do as well. It's a really cool thing. There's games, there's just weekly events that you can take part in, and I'll let my team talk a bit more about in detail of what this looks like. But again, it's called Kayrouz. I highly recommend checking it out. We have about 100,000 daily active users, 700,000 monthly active, and millions of registered users. So it's a really cool community of people, and it's ever expanding. Last note on it in general is it's also a UGC platform. So it's built on Unity. There's a Lua layer glued onto it. So functionally pretty similar to how Roblox functions, where you can build stuff, publish it, monetize it. And our users help us kind of perpetuate this ever expanding universe of cool, unique experiences. And we're quite proud of it. So I wanted to bring two members of our team, one of our lead product designers, Ian Costello, and one of our lead game developers, Drew Kenady, to talk more about how they ended up in this position, how they got into the industry in general, some of the things that are like they are most passionate about and that they enjoy in their current role and what they get to do. Also some of the challenges that they have to deal with every day. But I think most importantly, I wanted to bring them along to give you guys an opportunity to hear like firsthand, what is it actually like to work in the industry in these positions in product and engineering, which you may be interested in too. So I think it'll be a valuable opportunity to just get some insider information of people doing this thing, how they ended up there, and I hope you enjoy. So without further ado, I'd love to bring our lead product designer, Ian Costello, to the stage to talk about what is it like to design Kayrouz.
Thank you very much.
Welcome in.
Like that for me.
Yes, sir. Quick transition.
Hey everyone, this is my first time doing one of these sorts of things, so excellent opportunity I'm taking here. I'm Ian Costello, as Matt said. I'm lead product designer on Kayrouz, and I make people feel things with product design. Next slide. So, when I say that I make people feel things with design, I like to call that invoking feeling. What is invoking feeling? Invoking feeling is when media that you experience takes you and leaves you with a new sensation, something more about yourself, etc. That is what I specialize in at Kayrouz. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I mean when I'm talking about invoking feeling. Next slide. So, I have 6 examples here. It's not comprehensive, but 6 ways that I think feeling can be invoked on people through media. There's pow, when you get hit by something, when something sort of hits you and feels bigger than what you are. The ooh, the ah, that I think especially captures when something is bigger than you or yourself, something that you could really only experience through fiction, something that doesn't exist in real life. There's eureka, when you learn something, you feel like you've been changed and you've come away from the experience from the media with something a bit more. There's love, there's romance, a very human feeling. I have an example here, my lovely wife, shout out to her. There's twin, which is when you look at media and you see yourself. You see a bit of yourself in a piece of media, and then you actually can share that media with others, and you feel a shared sense of connection. And then the last one I've included here is booyah, which is when you feel a sense of victory. Of course, there is failure on the other side of that media, but essentially that media gives you a sense of accomplishment. Next slide. So imagine a medium with all of these, with the booyah, with the ooh-yah, with the love, with the eureka, with the sense of accomplishment. Imagine it. A 10-game losing streak of Overwatch. No, not actually, even though that is pretty comprehensive of a lot of negative feelings. What I'm actually talking about is video games. The ultimate form of media that is interactive, that encapsulates every possible feeling that can be invoked. It is the perfect way to reach people with what you have in your head and your heart, I think more so than any other medium. For me, one particular video game when I was younger, World of Warcraft, invoked a very strong feeling of another, I mean quite literally, another world. So a lot of the ooh-yah, but more importantly, I think what struck me even more was the sense of community. The sense that everyone who is here is sharing a connection that they don't get the opportunity to do otherwise. And this was the early 2000s, Facebook and all that sort of stuff was emerging, but World of Warcraft specifically for me gave me a sense of awe and a sense of deeper interaction with others that I had of course never seen before. I was pretty young. And I took that to heart, and I knew that someday I wanted to do something like this and invoke feeling like this. So I took my existing form of preferred expression, art. I like to doodle and sketch a lot, inspired by my dad and his mother before him. I took that as my sort of hobby, and I wanted to invoke feeling with that. But, come around high school, art isn't the most appealing degree. It's not the most consistent when it comes to, I want to go somewhere and just go make a bunch of money. So choose something a little bit more stable. I go for graphic design. Okay, cool. Put a digital swing on it, and I enroll at the University of Florida right out of college, enter their graphic design program. But then I realized something as I'm doing all these mocks for phone apps and websites. When you bring in interaction, it's a whole other dimension and a whole other layer to the experience. It is quite literally, instead of somebody just walks up and that's your one shot to invoke the feeling, it's a constant relationship, and it's a constant, deep and rich pattern where there's many opportunities to invoke feeling, many dimensions. So it's like, okay, this is awesome. UI UX, that's what I'm going to do right out of college. Joke's on me. I graduate in May of 2020. Not a great time for a couple reasons. And so it actually took me about 9 months to find a job. And I applied to pretty much every video game industry that I could, or video game company that I could. Not many people hiring until I got a message back from a little company called PocketWorlds. Next slide. I go through the interviews, I pass a test, do some more interviews, and I get an offer letter that says Junior Product Designer. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome. What's a product designer? I was here for UI UX, but I don't care. I've got the job. I'm in. Foot in the door in the video game industry. Number one thing I think everyone cares about. But I learned very quickly what a product designer is. First of all, it is UI UX, especially if you're going to be working on a mobile app, which Highrise primarily is. I mean, we do stuff in landscape and desktop, etc. But mobile app, it's a relationship with users that goes very far. So I'm testing with them, I'm asking them questions, I'm learning about them, forming a relationship with them. It's being a user advocate. It's taking that and going even further into every discussion at the company. It's not just going to be UI UX the entire time. I'm talking to people in our live ops, people in our art team, people in Q&A, people like devs, I mean, constantly. And I have to be there as the #1 advocate for the user. I understand who they are and what they want, or rather what they need. I'm looking at the data. At this point now, it is somewhat of a team lead, more so a team captain. I'm actually guiding a lot of the juniors at the company, how things are run. I actually celebrate my 5-year anniversary literally tomorrow, so thank you. Which gives me a lot of wisdom and experience about the unique way that PocketWorlds does things. And so it's actually been a really awesome opportunity with some of the juniors, even just recently, who have joined the company, to mentor them. I can talk about that later. Or rather right now, because that 5 years actually gives me UNC status with a lot of the juniors at the company. But well, that passes by quick. Point being, I wear a lot of hats, as they say. So that's enough about how I got here and sort of the description of my job. Let me tell you a little bit about a project I worked on recently to give you a bit more of a zoomed in scope. So this project is called Nectar Yard. It is a month-long event that is running in Highrise already right now. We started it at the beginning of the month. For context, we have weekly events, which are an opportunity for your users to compete and do sort of our weekly mini game to earn items both in a linear progression track and then also in a ranked setting. That's our weekly events. This monthly event is actually acting as a wrapper across all of them, where the weekly events are going to funnel upwards into the monthly event. So the rewards that users are going to get in the weekly event funnel up to this monthly event. Another special thing about this monthly event is it's focused on crews. Crews are effectively just our crew system, or sorry, guild system at the game. It is how users bundle up and sort of have an identity, a group identity, and primarily it is how they compete in the weekly events. We wanted to try something a little bit different. We're giving them a monthly event where it is all about these crews who are working on a garden that they own. They're growing flowers with seeds that they get from the weekly event. So, all that being said, I get that sort of spec from a PM higher up in the company. I'm just sort of the UI, the product designer. They're going to give me their vision, and it's like 8 pages long. So I immediately take that shit and I put it in Claude so that I can condense it down, turn it into a visual format that I understand. That's my step one on where I come in on this. So that I can understand, okay, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? And then I start processing on, okay, what's the intended experience for the user? They've got the vision of how it fits into the app and what it's meant to do in the long term. I come in and now I'm like, okay, what is the users at their job? They open up the app and they see this thing called Nectar Yard. What follows next? I zoom in and I make the vision real. So I get the spec. The devs have actually already started working on it because that's how we do at PocketWorlds. I was working on something else and then I came into it just now. And so they've got some, rudimentary wireframes of the experience. But now it's my time to come in and really give it my love and polish on this feature. So here's a little bit of a glimpse into how I work. I, of course, primarily work in Figma, the design application. It's great for collaborative work, great for sharing stuff with our devs. #1 thing any designer is using in the industry at the moment, for right now, we'll see. And then I go into an incredibly fast iterative loop with our developer on this project. Shout out to Chris if he sees this later. And he's actually using this really cool thing that Drew's going to talk about later, which is a custom-built AI that we have that actually helps us directly interface with Unity, which is our engine that we work with, to just absolutely supercharge our workflow. So because Chris is supercharged, I get to be supercharged as we iterate on every single aspect of this experience, this special world that the users get to come to and tend to their garden. Because there's no garden tending anywhere else in the app. This is an entirely fresh thing. So I do that. I'm of course slacking, just any other stakeholders on the project, our CEO, CTO who are checking in, artists, stuff like that. And then, of course, at some point we'll be shipping, but really my main point is just that iterative loop is super fast so that I can get in there and I have the literal app in my hand and I can feel how it's supposed to feel to the user literally iterative sessions of like 30 minutes. I test it. I don't like this, send it to Chris, boom, we keep going. So that's just sort of a look over of what I'm doing, let's get into a couple examples of where in this project I'm specifically working with the notion of invoking feeling. So the tutorial, as I said, this is not a concept that exists otherwise in High-Rise. We need to explain how this works to new people. We're going to tell people they can get a bunch of cool items from it. They're going to want to come in and they're going to want to understand how it works. They don't want any confusion between them and point B, which is the shiny new thing. So as an example, in this particular event, users get these pet butterflies, and they're actually effectively used as the tool to harvest nectar from the plants that they grow. In our first iteration of the first-time user experience, the Fatui, we immediately throw the butterfly at them, and we put some text on it. It's like, choose a butterfly to collect nectar in your crew garden. I'm like, okay, cool, we put the description there. They'll get it. They'll understand. They didn't understand. And so we go back to the sort of drawing board on this. It's like, well, we put the text in front of them. How do they not understand? That's like 80% of my job, truth be told. So we figure out, we look back at the flow on how we are going to solve this so that we don't invoke confusion in users. It's a terrible feeling, but instead we invoke eureka. So what we do instead, and again, this is just a micro example of all the stuff going on in this project, is we get them to the point, we don't introduce the butterfly yet, but we're walking them through, sort of holding their hand until they need to use a butterfly to harvest the nectar from their plant. And then we say, oh, snap, you don't have a butterfly? And they're like, oh shit, I don't have a butterfly. And so now they're paying attention, they're looped in, they're like, why don't I have a butterfly? I'm supposed to have a butterfly. And it is from there, and only then, that we actually ask them, or rather prompt them to choose a butterfly to then harvest their nectar. So what we've done here is, they're like, oh shit, I don't have a butterfly. They're paying attention. We actually confront them with the confusion, and then we give them the relief of like, oh cool, I get a butterfly. I got this cool, choose one of 3 colors, Pokemon starter type shit. And then they actually get the nectar. They get the nectar because they now can collect from it. So we went from sort of just breezing over a whole core aspect of this new game and this new flow, and instead now we actually give them this like mini hero cycle of like, oh my god, I had a problem, you fixed it for me, thanks. That's how you get people to pay attention, and that's how you teach them new concepts. So that's just one example. Here's another one. In High-Rise, we of course love it when people are playing together directly in the app at the same time. That's actually why we even created this whole thing. That's why we gave them this space, this garden, to be together in at the same time. So we love when people are doing that. Reality is they're not always going to be able to do that. We have a mobile app, global across the world, many languages. People in these crews are going to be international. They can't all be together at the same place in the same time. So that leaves a little bit of a gap in their ability to be together at the same place at the same time, when what we want to invoke is a feeling of community. So that leaves us with the question, how are we going to do that? And so we came up with this idea of giving them a little sticky board. And what you can see there, can we back up just one sec? No worries. And what you can see here is like, okay, it'd be really fun, because we feel this in the user testing. It's like, okay, cool, what now? How do people know that I've been here and that I will be here when I'm not actually here in the exact moment? So we say sticky board, draft up a sketch in like 20 minutes right after the call. The dev immediately starts working on his own version to start testing, is this going to work? How is this going to function? And that gives me, once again, a very material thing to actually test the feeling, how to invoke the feeling. And then from there, his version works, but of course I want it to look a little, more in line with everything else going on in the app. From there, then I go into iterating. I sort of spin up a bunch of variations based on the context of our project. It's supposed to be cozy, friendly. It's supposed to be a literal skeuomorphic sort of noteboard that exists in the garden itself. Like, okay, some things I like here, some things I don't. And then I take it directly into Figma, and I'm like, okay, this is exactly the way we want it. And then I send that back to Chris. And so now what we've done is we've taken the function of users being able to leave little notes, and some of them are even, I've looked and seen how they use this feature. They use this for strategizing, like, hey, don't touch these plants until whatever time so that we can coordinate and do whatever. But they also just put stuff like chicken nuggets for president. And it's like, no matter if you can't be in there at the exact same time, you can come in and you can get this warm, welcoming little, funny little message from your crew. And And that's what we're trying to invoke. We're trying to invoke that feeling of community, but of course, solve it with function where we can. And that's just a couple of examples there of literally someone says it's their favorite thing. And this is in a Discord where I'm literally talking to these users every single day just to sort of develop that relationship with them. And the other one's pretty small, but it's just them saying that this is one of their favorite things that have come out in high-rise in a long time. And I think that's the really gratifying stuff, and I'll actually get to more of that in just a second. Boom. So to speak on this, the project, like I said, launched at the beginning of March, so it's live now. I was the designer on it. I want to do my due diligence to actually see how people are using it. That's the really fun thing of a live app, is you can go in there once people have actually gotten access to something and you start interacting with them. And I start checking in on all the people who tested it originally and how they're doing it now that it's not a theoretical thing. It's not a thing in a lab. It is now a thing actually in the actual high-rise. I'm popping in, checking in on them. You can see that in the sort of second image there and seeing how they're doing. And it's really cool, honestly, just to see the sort of designs that they're doing with the flowers, because they get to choose all sorts of different ones, and how they're also min-maxing and strategizing. They're saying stuff like, don't harvest the flowers at this time, and don't tell anyone how we're harvesting the flowers, because it is ultimately a competition between crews who can collect the most nectar by the end of the month. But then I go a little deeper, and I follow up with one of them specifically on Discord in our DMs. He's actually a user that I've got a pretty good connection with. We literally greet each other at the beginning of every week to make sure see how we're doing. And he says something in particular to me that I think really makes the magic on the next slide here. Essentially, this user, who's actually been using our app for 10 years, so they've been working with this stuff twice as long as I have, they say that this has actually been one of the best opportunities they've had in a super long time to be in the same room together with their crew, with the people they identify with. And in that moment, it may be 8:30 in the office where I'm just chilling and sitting, talking to these users. But in that moment, I think back to World of Warcraft, and I think back to why I set out to do this, to form bonds and community between people. And it is in this exact moment that I realize it and I feel the payoff. And that is a unique opportunity that PocketWorlds provides me, because otherwise in another company, I would not have been able to say, hey, I want the sticky notes like this. Hey, I think there's a problem with the Fatui. And the sort of cycles on getting that done would have been way too long to ever actually feel ahead of time what the users are going to feel and have control over what sort of feeling we're going to invoke with them. So I'll wrap up here with a few things that I kind of wish people had told me as I was on the verge of going into the gaming industry. Advice to the soon-to-be grads and video game industry seekers out here. First of all, build for others. You can build for yourself, you can design a game for yourself, you can play a game by yourself, but that completely disservices you out of the entire experience of invoking feeling in others. You don't get the feedback loop, you don't understand the real constraints and challenges that are going to happen, and it means way, way, way more to a hiring manager, a person in that position, to see that you actually made something and shipped it and sent it to others. You can't invoke feeling unless you put it in somebody else's hands. Secondly, think for yourself. Ostensibly in college and in university, they're giving you a lot of information and sort of telling you how to get things done. But now is the time to actually think for yourself. Even the internet and even some companies that you might go work at will sort of tell you exactly what to do. But if you don't take this moment to sit down and ask yourself what you want to see in the world and how you want to do things, you are going to have a very hard time finding your place in the industry, especially. And then finally, feel for others. So I've mentioned that you have to build for others, but you have to think for yourself. Feeling is a two-way interaction. You would not be able to invoke the feelings in others if you do not have those feelings strongly enough on your own. it takes really, really big feelings to survive the entire development process, from strategy to speccing out a feature, to speccing out a game, to speccing out and then developing all the cycles and getting past QA and then getting to the user. By the time it's gotten to the user, if your feelings weren't big from the beginning, it's just not going to be what you wanted it to be. I think that's honestly my biggest takeaway after 5 years, because I honestly didn't have the strongest feelings once I started. I was just glad that I had the job. But I've honestly, over time, developed the feelings to be like, this is what I will put my foot down for, and this is what I feel extremely passionate about. And again, PocketWorlds has afforded me that opportunity to grow a lot in 5 years, where I went from junior product designer to I talk to the CEO every day, and we make sure that these things are the way that we want it to be before it goes out. And on a final note, it is only because of those principles that I actually even got this job. So while I was in that 9 months of unemployment during that super duper fun time, I did not sit on my hands. I looked at my portfolio and I said that it was not good enough. I went back to my projects. I went back to the presentation of my portfolio, and I upped the ante on what I wanted it to be and how I wanted it to look and the quality of the entire experience. For me personally, motion I think is a great way to convey feeling, to invoke feeling, and so I made sure that was in the entire thing. And I was later told by my hiring manager, who showed me a list of 1,000 failed applicants, this is what actually got me with my foot into the door of the hiring process. So that is what I will reiterate to everyone here. It will take not only putting in the extra mile, but it'll take doing that once you are no longer in the structure of university. You have to do it on your own. So final slide here, I think. Just as a little shout out, we literally do have UT grads in the office. Actually, one of them junior PM'd on the Nectar Yard project. So it is not a non-reality for people who could be in this very room to actually be working on projects and features at PocketWorlds, where there are many, many, many projects happening at the same time. So I think that's it for me. I've got one final slide here where I'm going to hand it over to Drew, who is just one of those many developers where when I say I want something one way, we'll see if it comes out the same way when he's got his hands on it.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah, if I'm lucky.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Great job.
Let me get you the mic here.
All right, thanks for having me. My name is Drew Kenady. I am the lead gameplay engineer, developer at PocketWorlds, working on our weekly live events, user-facing live events. But my path here was anything but linear, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Don't mind. Over to the next slide. Yeah, from YouTube to live ops. You can go ahead and move forward. So yeah, this is a bit of my portfolio, some of the earliest games that I worked on. I am originally from Bowling Green, Kentucky. My first job out of my 4-year degree was at a local studio called HitSense. We worked on a few mobile games. If anyone is likely to be aware of any of them, it might be Draw Stick Man Epic, which was the one on the top left. Eventually, as I was working at the company, I grew into the lead gameplay developer role there and ended up running gameplay on Draw Stick Man Epic 2, the sequel. So I had the opportunity to actually push our team to adopt Unity at the time, in I think it was around 2014 that we were doing that, and used it as an excuse to learn it myself. That was fun. But after my my entry into the workforce, my second game dev job was in Nashville, Tennessee. And I worked there for about a year's time, but I was actually laid off in 2016. And you can imagine that there's not a lot of game dev opportunities in the Kentucky and Tennessee area. So what is one to do? Well, so I started a YouTube channel. My hobby has always been retro game collecting, so I started chronicling my hobby of retro game collecting on YouTube as Nintendrew. I was able to build an audience of loyal viewers in excess of 300,000 subscribers. And it was just a really interesting kind of shift for me, because I was continuing to put out feelers for game dev jobs in 2016, and while I was waiting for any of them to bite, I was like, we might as well roll with this. And it ended up being that right around Christmas of 2016, my YouTube channel started to turn a profit. So I was like, well, I guess we're rolling with this for now. You can go ahead. So yeah, I did YouTube full-time for 8 years, and then actually brought it back full circle in 2022. I launched my own indie game called Carl. It's a love letter to all the games that I grew up with, inspired by classic PC platformers, DOS games, etc. Especially Cave Story. I love Cave Story. A huge inspiration there. And I was, after the launch of my indie title, I was putting out further feelers to try to figure out if I could, what other opportunities were here, because I'd been out of the game for a minute, and I heard about a little game called High-Rise, which Ian, of course, alluded to, but I grew up with a game called Habbo Hotel. If anyone is familiar with Habbo Hotel, or eventually rebranded as Habbo, and immediately on first impressions, I had this pang of nostalgia where I was like, oh, this feels like new Habbo. Like, I want to play it. So it's very much like Habbo or Club Penguin meets Roblox in practice. So. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about what my day-to-day life is at PocketWorlds. As I mentioned, I am the sole developer responsible for delivering the gameplay for our live weekly events that reach hundreds of thousands of users each month. And I'm never working on the same project 2 weeks in a row. So for an ADHD kid, that is very fulfilling work. All right, so yeah, just to give a little bit more detail on High-Rise, the platform itself. High-Rise is a social platform with a virtual world at its center. At its center. When we're talking about the worlds in High-Rise, they are all built with our internal tool that is available to external developers called High-Rise Studio, which is kind of like our layer of tools built upon the Unity IDE. And as I mentioned, my role is in the live operations team, so I am building unique gameplay experiences associated with clothing drops that we are launching more broadly in the app each week. So basically, I work with our creative director. Our creative director defines a narrative that our clothing drop is trying to accomplish, and it's my job to work with the designer to figure out how is the gameplay going to serve the clothing, and how is it going to, like, because I mentioned it's similar to Habbo, but it is definitely skewed towards like a fashion-forward kind of, I don't know, definitely a well-connected Zillennial type audience. So the clothing is certainly our most strong product. So we want to make sure the gameplay serves the product well. So that's my job, is to build that custom gameplay each week. But we're going to talk a little bit about my schedule, because if anybody has done this kind of work, that probably sounds absurd. So let's move on to the next stage, or to the next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the events that I have launched since the end of January. First one was Tarnished Hearts here. So our clothing drop theme was about heartbreak, and just kind of like an emo kind of edgy sort of clothing drop. So the gameplay that we came up with was to have a sort of edgy note or letter exchange, where I built 2 parallel gameplay loops, a sender and a recipient mechanic, where players would send canned messages to other players, and there was a hidden heartbreak mode, where if you would reject multiple letters in a row, you'd eventually build up a huge bonus for being a heartbreaker, and then your heart would tarnish and turn black. So it ended up being this social contagion where our players didn't know what this mechanic was at the start of the week, but by the end of the week, all the hearts in the rooms had turned black. And so it was a really cool like expression of what that narrative was supposed to be. And we've done that with all of these events. So, and this is since January. This is just basically in the month of February. So Nova Pop is my personal favorite. This is one that I was really pushing for. This was a kind of Y2K themed sort of nostalgia tech sort of vibe. Lots of like chrome and bubble art, and stuff. So what I pushed for is it's similar to our Tarnished Hearts gameplay here, but instead of sending letters, we were sending like song recommendations, like MP3 files, sort of like a Napster, LimeWire type aesthetic. So you would send recommendations for songs to other players. You would choose to accept or reject, and accepting those songs would put it into a playlist, which was themed like an MP3 player. You can see a little bit of it there in the corner. We'll get back to that later. But they were actually associated with real music clips that the players would hear in the room. So I was able to build a sort of music tie-in mechanic. So yeah, I have an incredible amount of creative freedom in my role, in as much as like I have pretty much complete free reign of interpretation of how these mechanics should work to serve the product. So. And this is my schedule. So every Thursday is when we launch our events. On Thursday, we'll do a kickoff to figure out what our direction will be, what we want those mechanics to look like to serve the product. We will finalize the specs and the mechanics on Friday, so that's the day where we get truly aligned and make sure that everybody's on the same page. On Monday, I continue to iterate on some of those prototypes and incorporate the final world art, theoretically. Tuesday, we try to code lock and deliver it to QA. It often pushes past Tuesday. We usually go into Wednesday. But Wednesday, theoretically, is reserved for bug fixes. And then on Thursday, we ship the event to users and repeat the entire process over again. Over here on the right, you'll see a picture of High-Rise Studio. This is just kind of like giving a little preview of like what the tool itself that we've offered the community to be able to build essentially any kind of experience that you want within our platform. Again, copying the Roblox or Fortnite kind of model. We have our own Lua glue layer that allows our users to create their own gameplay within our worlds. And I, as an internal developer, am using the same tools that our community has access to. And this particular production cycle would not be possible without the internal AI agent that Ian alluded to called Rosie. So Rosie is an AI agent specifically built to help us build worlds within High-Rise Studio. It is built as a plugin layer on top of Claude Code Opus 4.6. It designs and tests worlds inside the editor just like a human developer would. So you can describe changes that you want to see in the Unity editor. It will read the scene. It will use a serializer to make edits to your scene. It will activate play mode, check the console, make sure that it doesn't have any compile errors, etc. And works as a true collaborator with developers. And it has been such a success that we have started to roll it out in early capacity to some of our trusted community content creators, and they have been having a great time iterating on some new experiences within High-Rise. And this is a takeaway that I think is really important here. Honestly, my work in the past 4 months even has absolutely transformed. 95% of the code that I am shipping now on these live events is authored by AI, specifically by Claude Code and by our Rosie layer. So my job has transformed to the job of a director. I am now working in collaboration with an AI agent or a team of AI agents. I am reviewing code. I am course correcting. It almost feels like working with a junior developer and pair programming. It really has fundamentally transformed the nature of the work. And I think the most exciting thing is that it democratizes gameplay in a way, or it democratizes programming in a way that it has not been at any time before in history. So I think the biggest unlock for this kind of development is to stop thinking of LLMs and AI agents as a co-pilot and start thinking of them as genuine collaborators, especially with the most recent developments in some of these agentic models. I've found that the threshold or the barrier of should I ask the model this question about design drops to nearly zero at this point. So when you are building the spec alongside a model and like running ideas alongside something like Opus 4.6, it will raise issues and edge cases and questions that you may overlook. And it will also propose ideas and help you brainstorm in ways that you might not have considered, might be kind of out of the box. So I certainly recommend, honestly, in my pattern, I mentioned that schedule. On Thursday and Friday, I spend at least a day working with Claude and with Rosie to build the context to make sure that we are absolutely on the same page about what this next week's event is going to be before I get started. And I kind of use it as a director to keep me on track. So it's that 5% that I have to go in and fix, it will keep me on track of the tasks that remain. 99% of the time, honestly, if I get a report from QA that they say, oh, this UI is messed up or this thing's layered wrong, I'll paste it into Rosie and Rosie will one-shot a fix. Again, it has completely transformed the nature of the work. So here's an example. Back to NovaPop. This is our little in-world MP3 player that I built. And the idea here was that we wanted to have a collection of 10 plus different 16-second clips that we could cycle between that were actually associated with these canned like song file names, right? The issue that I ran into is that the songs that we had were not all exactly the same, like the clips were not all exactly the same length. They were not all the same BPM. And I needed something that was exactly the same deterministic length so that we could loop them correctly and they could be associated with a real like in-game mechanic with a boost to the amount of tickets that were being earned. So what I did is I described the problem to Rosie in plain English. It decided that it needed to download FFmpeg to be able to make the change. It calculated the tempo adjustments that it needed to make. It made them, and it worked in one shot. So this is an example of where you can leverage these cutting-edge models in ways that are higher level or more meta than just asking them for coding tasks. And yeah, the payoff here is that as I'm moving forward from week to week, each of these mechanics that we're testing and that we're prototyping out and putting in front of users, we get real immediate feedback because of the nature of our Lua glue layer and our ability to push out updates on the fly, if there's a bug in the production code, or if there's a really low-hanging feature that like would make the experience better, I can get an update out within 30 minutes with a bug fix or with a new feature. And these tools, these modules, compound and snowball. So, like for instance, this UFO catcher claw machine was something that I kind of a pet project of mine for a week, where I really wanted to make a claw machine, and it was a hit. The players really enjoyed it. So now every event going forward, we have our claw machine hidden somewhere in the world. So we're kind of expanding this library of different modular puzzle pieces we can use for these weekly events. And because Rosie is holding the full context of each of these projects, it's only getting smarter every time that we move on. And every time, like if I have a mechanic that's, for instance, that Nova Pop mechanic with the music, I can point it to Tarnished Hearts and say, like, you know, we sent letters in this one. Can we send songs instead? And instead of having a pop-up, can we move it to an inbox? And say, oh yeah, no problem. Let's do this. Yeah. So yeah, the more we ship, the faster and better the next event gets. And as I mentioned, yeah, I think the biggest takeaway here, and the thing that's most exciting to me, is that if you are willing to put in the time to learn the skill of directing, you can, from any discipline, tackle game development in current year. So learning a specific discipline or a certain language or a certain syntax is no longer the bottleneck. The bottleneck is, can you put in the time to learn what good code looks like and to be able to optimize and direct a product from a more meta level. And so obviously, like the core foundations of computer science and of programming are still fundamental and are foundational for good shippable code. But again, the nature of the job, the nature of the industry has just absolutely transformed, even in the past 4 to 6 months. The bottleneck is now, do you have a good idea, and can you commit the time to execute on it? And there has never been a better time to build anything, an app, a game, website, business, whatever you want to do. So I think one of the best things about working at PocketWorlds is that they have encouraged me to use AI where effective and appropriate to level up and unlock faster and better processes for my daily work, as opposed to trying to supplant or replace human work. We are very strong and it's very important to us, I think, as a company to use the cutting edge tools to improve our ability to put out high quality content. So yeah, some final takeaways. Again, just some things that I wish that I had been told starting out early on in game development. So your path will certainly not be linear. As I mentioned, I did start out in game development and then took a roundabout path through YouTube, an indie game, and now I'm back at PocketWorlds, or back in the game industry at PocketWorlds, working on live ops, putting out things for hundreds of thousands of users every week. It has not been a path that I expected, but you know, you roll with it, and it's been very rewarding. Number 2, ship things. Again, this is calling back to what Ian was talking about with the portfolio. I find that the vast majority of employers in the games industry are looking at your portfolio first and foremost, and that if you have not started building something, you should start building something yesterday. Again, there's never been a better time. Just like make 100 crappy games. You know, if you like, it's just getting that experience in and getting the process, even just being able to show that you can ship something from day one to finish, like to get it out in front of users. That's huge in the eyes of an employer. My indie game, Carl, was not a huge success. It was really a passion project. But the fact that I was able to get something from nothing to launching on all major consoles as an indie dev was, so I think it certainly serves my portfolio. So, yeah. Then for number 3, definitely learn to collaborate with AI as soon as you possibly can. If you're not already leveraging it, it is, as I mentioned, I mean, it is a game changer, and that's an understatement. The skills of an AI generalist, I think, are going to be paramount especially for software engineers and for anyone in the computer science field over the next decade. And I'm sure that you all are feeling that more than anybody, as far as how it has modified the scene, I suppose. For number 4, this one I think is really important and really understated. Constraints lead to creativity. The reason, or one of the biggest through lines, one of the biggest reasons that I am such a fan of retro games and why I started collecting retro games, is my passion and respect for the developers of the time, whenever any game, any particular game was released, like seeing how developers were able to make the most of the hardware constraints that were presented to them and the constraints of their IDEs, their environments, their development kits. There's a, I'll have to, I think a YouTube channel, Game Hut, I think is the name of the channel that I'm thinking of. There's a guy, John, who worked in Sega in the 90s, and there's a video on YouTube where he talks about the Sega or Sonic 3D Blast for Sega Genesis. Sonic 3D Blast had a 30 or 15 or 30-second intro animation that was kind of like a pre-rendered 3D cutscene with Sonic and some birds and stuff. But the animation itself should not have been able to fit on that cartridge. The Sega Genesis cartridge was 4 megabytes in storage, and that animation alone should have been at least like 16 megabytes. So in this video, I think, I can't remember the guy's name, John Game Hut on YouTube, he describes the process that they went through of building their own compression and dithering algorithm to be able to fit this animation on the cartridge. And it's just, that kind of story is phenomenally inspiring to me, to be able to see people look at an impossible problem or a problem that appears to be impossible and find those unique, like it's almost like a puzzle box, like finding that right kind of elegant solution that solves the problem correctly. So I think that constraints are unsung heroes in breeding that kind of creativity. So definitely make the most of the constraints that are put upon you. And finally, follow what excites you. I would not be where I was today if I did not follow my passion of talking about my hobby of retro game collecting, if I didn't push to get myself in the door of the game industry despite being in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. And now I'm here, and I have a very fulfilling job where I'm able to work on something new and exciting every single week. So, all right. I think that's it for me. So yeah, that kind of gives you a peek into my story. I think we're gonna, do we have any time for Q&A? Is that what we're gonna open it up to? Yeah. All right, perfect. You guys wanna come out? Do a group Q&A? Thanks, y'all. Oh yeah.
Do that on stream too, if you don't mind.
Yes, yeah.
No, if I get that, I think that's the one.
Yeah.
I'll give this to whoever. Last quick note. There's one more slide, if you don't mind switching to that. Oh, there it is. In collab with EGaDS, we're actually going to be hosting a game jam over spring break. So if anybody's like interested in getting their hands on our tools, you absolutely should. We're going to have some fun prizes. We're still figuring that out, but you know, first place we're going to get, you can either get a PS5, Nintendo Switch 2, whatever you want, within reason. But we'll have some other fun prizes, and beyond that, it's like if you are interested in either of these type of roles, like within product or engineering, it's a great way to see what our tools can offer, what are the experience that we build, what our platform has to offer. And if you happen to be a senior who's going to be graduating and you're looking for a junior game dev or a product role, and you build something really impressive, we're going to want to talk to you. So it's fun experience. You'll get good exposure, good hands-on experience, potential to win some cool stuff, and also potential to open up some doors. So yeah, there'll be more information to come through like official GDAD and EGaDS channels before spring break hits. So you get like the actual prompt and all the details and of how to submit and all that stuff. So we'll make sure to communicate that as clearly as we can. But I'll also give a line of like my email or something if anybody has any questions that does want to participate. But anyway, that's to come probably next week when you'll receive more info, and we'd love for you to join us in Hi-Rise.
All right.
I guess we're moving to Q&A now. Yeah. Does it matter who wears the stream mic? Should we switch? Okay. Yeah, if anybody has any questions.
Actually, two questions. I'll save them at the end of it.
Sure.
So first of all, recently, like other social platforms like Discord or Roblox have been grappling with the issue of like ID verification. Do you think there's value for users in anonymity, and do you think it's inevitable that user verification will become the standard for all these kinds of social networks?
It's a great question. Drew, are you best to handle that?
I could try.
Sure. Let's see what you got.
So my understanding is that we do have an opt-in user verification process that allows for, we have certain things gated in our platform behind that layer, which is not crucial to engaging with the experience. You can still chat with other users. You can still experience any of the worlds. Specifically, what comes to mind is that we lock voice chat behind the 18+ verification. and that's just for trust and safety concerns. Um, I think I don't know that I have enough of advantage to be able to give you a good answer as to what's most likely to happen as far as the broader trend in the industry. If I were to give you kind of just like a vibe check, like I have a feeling that given the blowback to the Discord situation, I think that it seems that there's always going to be a demand for that layer of privacy. I certainly think that there is a value to that layer of privacy. From where we're at, like I don't anticipate that we'll be making it a mandatory process, but
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what kind of legislation is levied. But from our perspective, it's something that I think, we don't want to alienate that portion of the user base that does care about privacy. Certainly.
Last, like broader industry, I would not be surprised if it does become more common, just with safety issues with underage folks and whatnot. It seems that there is some utility to some of those functionalities, and I think it's just about how you integrate that into your platform in an appropriate way that doesn't, affect everybody that it doesn't need to. So I think it's like you have to be really precise with that. It's a delicate process, and like I think precision is important there. We'll see what happens. I totally see the utility. I totally see the other side too. So it's like, to Drew's point, I don't think it's something that we're going to make mandatory anytime soon, but we also have some processes and checks and balances already in place to keep people safe. Larger companies with more stakeholders and a lot more money involved, I think they probably are under more pressure, and that's probably going to be the general trend. So I'm also interested to see where it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So as you see these AI tools being developed, specific so people who mess with directly the AI, or are they just using it as
I think I hope this answers your question. What comes to mind is one of my close coworkers is Ryan. He is a staff engineer working on Rosie specifically. He and I have been the ones who have contributed the most to Rosie, I would say, in as much as he built the foundation, and then I've been kind of like poking holes at like what Rosie can't do and telling him like, hey, I can't handle this situation. Can you fix this? Can you add this? And it's usually within an hour that he's got an update pushed for that. So we definitely do have folks that are dedicated to specifically the in-house AI tools. We have a client project that we're working on to help us kind of automate some of the bug fixes and QA reports that we get. Basically, an ongoing project to automate PRs, pull requests for bug fixes for user-facing client issues. So there's a few different pillars, I would say, that we are exploring as far as refining those tools in-house, and we're also I guess keep an ear to the ground or keep an eye out, because we're also talking about expanding that those projects into something a little bit more public facing, I guess, and potentially more B2B. So
You mentioned Sonic 3D Blast. Was that an isometric title or style of game?
To my recollection, yes, it was the one where you would get on it was like a sort of 3D platformer.
Board.
What's that?
It was a checkered board.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I heard about developers applying like a similar approach on the Super SNES with Yoshi's Island.
Yeah, the Super FX chip. Yep.
Yeah, and Donkey Kong 2. Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2.
Yeah, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island was one of the first that launched with the Super FX chip to have the like legitimate polygonal graphics on a 16-bit console. Like those are just endlessly fascinating to me. Like 3D Super Nintendo or Game Boy Advance games, like just really some of them are. I mean, like one of my favorite games of all time, Star Fox on Super Nintendo, right?
Hell yeah.
Now, objectively, Star Fox 60. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but in my world, objectively, Star Fox 64 is a better game. But Star Fox on Super Nintendo is phenomenal for what it did, and like that it tried to make polygonal graphics work in that era, and it succeeded on many fronts. So that's always been a through line of the passion that I have for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and some of the Star Fox components remind me of the Lawnmower Man video game.
Yeah.
The SNES. The kind of the shooter part.
Yeah. Or you even go back to like 3D World Runner on the NES, or what's the arcade one? The like Space Harrier, things like that. You know, like that they were always I don't know. we're at a point now in the industry where like the hardware constraints. I honestly I'm a bit nostalgic or like lament that we don't have as many hardware constraints as we used to
No.
because you can kind of just like make whatever you want anymore. And there's certainly well, AAA developers have laid the groundwork for making it okay to not optimize your games. So it seems like the but I mean you know anymore it used to be in my mind, and maybe that's the rose tinted classes, but like there was a certain kind of creativity I think that was bred from those constraints that like it seems to like there are projects in the current era that sort of recreate some of that feeling, like the Playdate, if you're familiar with the Playdate console. It's a black and white, the Crank console, yeah. Or like the Pico programmers, or folks that are making even just like homebrew retro titles for NES, Super Nintendo,
That's
Dreamcast,
right. There
etc.
are new games for the SNES.
Yeah, and I find those endlessly fascinating. I've got some friends that have worked on some of those, and it's really cool to see, you know, almost like take a jump in a time machine and see what it feels like to be a developer back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, that reminds me of like one particular one, I forget the name, it's like an Indiana Jones style.
Pitfall?
It's kind of like Pitfall, but you go through like pyramids. It looks like Indiana Jones, but it's a newer title.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Onto something. There's like 2 titles. But I was also going to ask you probably already discussed this, but maybe just to reiterate, why did you say that you think now is the best time to develop an app, develop the game? What were the things you said, app, game, what else?
Business, anything. I think it's the best time to build anything that you have in your brain because there's never been more access to the tools. There is an endless sea of resources for example, Unity game development. There
Constraints, as you mentioned.
Right. Yeah. So the constraints have been obliterated. At this
More so democratized.
Exactly. Yes. So it interested the point where like I've got coworkers in marketing that are prototyping apps or prototyping programs for like Matt built a bot for our Slack channel that specifically hypes up people in Slack. Like if somebody, you know, you share love with somebody, you have Hypebot, go hype them up and give them a message. And this is something you weren't doing before. This is you've never had an experience doing any kind of programming, is that right?
Yep.
Before our game jam,
Yep.
And then messing with Claude Code and with Rosie, you've
Yep.
Kind of come into your own on
Yeah.
some of those, right?
Just to iterate that point, I think like we had a company Game Jam. I'm a dum-dum. I'm not an engineer. I've never done this before, but like using Rosie and using Claude and just getting past like the installation process, that was the most technical part of like setting it up. Yeah, I was able to. There was a mini game that I loved from a N64 Turok Rage Wars game. Yeah. That I just thought of this game. It was like a monkey tag mode where you have to run around and shoot the monkey, and you know, anyway, it's like a random person turns into the monkey after enough time. I was able to build that in Hi-Rise for our game jam, and it's a functional game you can play in Hi-Rise now. If you search monkey tag, check it out. Leave a review. But it was like going through that process and like not being technical at all. It was just super cool. It's like, oh my god, like this really has leveled the playing field. And if you have an interesting idea, or you just, you know, you think that there's some fun idea that you want to convey and you feel like you weren't able to do it because you didn't have the technical skills or that specialized skill set prior, I think those types of folks like myself, we're just going to have more access to be able to act on actually making something like that.
Speaking of the two. I just want to add on to that to say that like even if you don't ship code that is authored by AI, I think an unsung avenue for just personal development is skill development with any of these models. Like for instance, I have always been intimidated by Blender. I am not a 3D modeler. That's always been my bottleneck for game development.
No Maya, no ZBrush, nothing.
I did a bit of Sculptress. Sculptress is where my comfort zone ended. but yeah, so
Blender is quite extensive, yes.
Yeah, I ended up using a Blender MCP with I can't remember if it was GPT or Claude at the time, but to learn enough in Blender for me to be able to build. I was building a bingo game at the time, so I had to build some like bingo balls for an intro that I was making, this like 3D animated intro. And I was able to do it after the course of like an afternoon of working with, again, I can't remember if it was Claude or GPT at the time, but I think that's another maybe undervalued avenue of value in the current era of these developments, is to be able to use these just for broad skill development. Like when you don't know what the hotkey is, what's the hotkey? I mean, it's as a parallel teacher, I think it's a very valuable resource.
Totally.
How did you end up utilizing that you said it was an AI assistant to create that project in Blender. How did you go about that?
Yeah, so basically I would use an MCP, which is a model context protocol, I think. Yeah, so it was able to view my Blender scene and direct me to certain UI panels and like point, because that's always been my bottleneck or my barrier with Blender is just the actual interfacing with the software. So like it would say like go to this panel and hit the material thing and do this, and I'm like, I don't see that. What are you talking about? And it would say like, oh, actually just check this. It's because you're in this. Or I'd send a screenshot and it'd be like, oh, it's because you're in this view. You need to go over here, hit N on the keyboard. Like, okay. So like that it again democratizing. It got past that barrier of the skill of I didn't have to learn. I didn't have to go sit and do tutorials for 3 weeks to be able to know how to use the hotkeys. Like I was able to say like, this isn't working. What do I do? And I'm learning through actual work.
Cool. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, this one's specifically for Drew.
Sure.
You
Keep-
mentioned before that you have quite a lengthy YouTube career. Yesterday, I met a few students who mentioned that they were trying some content creation on the side, either as a streamer or some scripted YouTube videos, just to try to build up some kind of presence online to help them break into the industry.
Sure.
Do you feel like your YouTube career actually helped you do that transition to the development side?
It's funny. I don't know if my experience is typical. My experience was pretty much the exact opposite. I did a poll with my viewers, after like a year after I launched my game, and I asked them like, how many of you are aware that I launched an indie game, which I have been talking about for the past year, and it was like 40% of them knew that I had launched a game. So I underestimated how much that I could be kind of promoting my own product and my own content. I think I was sheepish about being too like shilly for my own stuff, and I was like worried about like inundating the more regular or committed viewers. But what I found in retrospect was that they didn't even know. They were just like, you put out a 10-minute video and you talk about something, and I think you kind of like categorize that as like that's been done and taken care of. But if it's halfway through the video, like only 30% of people are actually going to see that, maybe if you're lucky, if they haven't skipped over it. So yeah. But I think so. Yeah, even with in excess of 300,000 subscribers, like I mentioned, like my indie game was not a great success, and it wasn't for lack of good reception. Like the people who played it seemed to enjoy it. It was more about like that exposure and that marketing. And there are some lessons that I learned there. But like, I guess I would say, well, 2 pieces of advice from that era and that chapter. One is I would not recommend launching on all platforms in the same launch window with a team of 2 developers. I would not recommend. It was a nightmare playing email tag with, I can't name which of the big 3, but it was not fun. And then the other is on the flip side, always follow your passion on both YouTube, gaming, whatever the field is. If you're following your passion, that I think that always shines through. I think it's like when people ask about like what kind of content to put out on YouTube in particular, I always point to like if there's a gap that you see, like some sort of video that you would like to watch that's not there, that's what you need to make. Like if you're interested in it, you're not that unique. Like somebody else is going to be interested in it too. So
Sure.
like talk about what you like, and somebody else will be there.
Well said. Cool. All good?
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Yeah. It's been a pleasure.